Good morning, students. Welcome again to another lesson. In the previous lessons, we did an extract and we talked about the selected devices and questions on context in terms of the extract. Today, we move on to the next one, whereby we identify the themes, character traits in extracts, and generally in the blossoms of the savannah. So before we embark on how to identify the two, we're going to read the following passage in order for us to get the gist of it. So I'll begin in the first part. It says, "Don't be funny with me with a weird kind of reasoning," said Tayo, getting impatient. "Do you prefer Nakuru bus stage to this serene environment?" "No, not at all," Resian said seriously. "I would rather live in the most noisy place on earth than live anywhere near a vagabond who would accost me in the most quiet and serene atmosphere with the intention of mutilating my sexuality. Of course, I also don't care whether I'm counted among Ntoye and Mengelana," an embarrassed Tayo said as she began to fold clothes, not looking at her sister. "What I know is that my body belongs to me. I belong to myself." She picked a pillow, tossed it on the bed, plumped it up and looked around, and looking around, she said fiercely, "Only when I'm dead would anybody mutilate my body." "Don't you think they can force us to undergo the ritual?" Resian asked fearfully. "What do you think will happen to us if Papai is forced by his clansmen to embrace the archaic culture that will require us to get the cat?" Resian Eyeyo, "I hope nothing of that sort happens, for if it does," she shrugged her shoulders and pulled an expressive face, "I don't know what will happen to us." So this is just a repetition of the same excerpt that we had, but now we're looking at a different aspect of it. So we begin the first one, whereby we learn how to identify the character trait of Resian according to this excerpt. So when it comes to the set books, especially in the Blossom of the Savannah, there are four ways in which you can know the character trait of a character. So one, from what the character says; two, from what the character does in terms of behavior; three, what other characters say about the same character; and finally, what the author tells us directly about that character. So once you're armed with those three, it becomes easy for you to identify the character trait. So when you're reading, be keen when you're reading to understand what are other characters saying about that character. What is that character saying or doing? What is the author saying about the same character? So there's so many ways in which you can know the character trait of that character. So from the sample question on the board, whereby you've been asked, what's the character trait of Resian? So we look at the whole excerpt and try to decipher what can be her character trait. We look at what she's saying. We look at anything that may be said by another character, or what she's doing, or what the author tells us directly. So in this case, one which we can pick is whereby Resian is asking Tayo a question, where she says, "Don't you think they can force us to undergo the ritual?" Resian asked fearfully. So from that sentence, from the word fearfully, the author has told us directly that she's asking fearfully, which makes us know that this girl is filled with fear, that eventually they are going to be forced to undergo female genital mutilation, or they're going to be circumcised forcibly, because it's a culture that the people of Nasila value greatly. So in this case, when you're answering the question on the character trait of Resian, you can simply write there fearful, and then a hyphen, and then you go on to explain why you arrived at fearful. In this case, you can say, Resian is fearfully asking if they are going to be forced to undergo the ritual. So there we can derive that this girl is already anticipating, already anxious about whether they're going to be forced to undergo the circumcision. So really that we can derive from the fact that the author has told us directly that she's asking if they can be circumcised. Then apart from that, you can know from what the character says. You can also look at Tayo, just to add on it, or for us to practice further, whereby Tayo talks about what I know is that my body belongs to me, I belong to myself. Then she continues to say, "Only when I am dead will anybody mutilate my body." So as she's talking to the sister, we can see some bit of stubbornness or some bit of assertiveness on her part. She has decided in her heart that she has no intention on being circumcised. She belongs to herself, and nobody has a right to force her to undergo circumcision when she does not want to be circumcised. So from her words, you can derive that this girl is assertive or this girl is stubborn. So those are the ways in which you can identify the character traits of a character. Then apart from that, you also have the second part of the question which talk about what is the theme evident in this extract. So when it comes to themes, this is where the author wants to communicate something to the readers. There's an issue he wants to address. There's a lesson he wants the readers to understand. So once you read the story and understand, you're able to easily identify the theme of the theme that's being driven by the writer. In this case, if you look at the excerpt, there are many themes here which come forth. For example, we can see where the son says, "Don't you think they can force us to undergo the ritual?" The son asks fearfully. The reason why I combined the themes and character traits together is because sometimes they are related. In that, for example, if the son is fearful, we can also conclude that there's the theme of fear. So sometimes these themes can be, these two things can be related. So it's very funny that sometimes you can find somebody scoring on the theme and then failing on the character traits, yet the evidence they gave could have easily directed them to answer the other. And most time when you look at your papers, you find that these two questions somehow follow each other. So if you identify theme, you should easily be able to identify character trait and vice versa. So in this case, you can identify the theme of fear. And if you look at the same part, you can see there's a use of the word intoye, the Magdalena, which means the uncircumcised. So that already communicates to us as a reader from what Tayo says, that in this community, being circumcised is a right or a ritual that they have to undergo. And that's what I said is asking, don't you think they can force us to undergo the ritual? What do you think will happen to us if Papa is forced by the clansmen to embrace the archaic culture that require us to get the cat? So from those words already you can know there's an aspect of culture and tradition, or simply just tradition or simply culture, whereby the community insists on women being circumcised. Even the author told us directly archaic culture. So you can derive from that and know that the theme of tradition that comes forth in this excerpt. So by being keen on your reading, you get to be easily able to identify the two. So always be keen on what the character is saying, be keen on what the character is doing, be keen on what other characters are saying about our character, and what the author tells you directly in the words that he uses to write the story. This way it becomes easy for you to identify both character and themes. And with those very few remarks, we come to an end of our lesson. I wish you all the best. Thank you for watching.